Hello everyone, and welcome to this video walkthrough on how to install Omeka S on a Debian server. Omeka S is different from Omeka Classic. If Omeka Classic is what you're after, I have a series of videos on my channel that you can use to learn how to go about doing that. But in this video, we're going to look specifically at Omeka S. It's a relatively easy system to install on a Debian server. I'll be using Debian 10. And because it's so easy, I think I'm going to try to do this in one video rather than break it up. This installation will require a standard LAMP stack. That's Linux, Apache, MySQL, and PHP. So we'll go through each one of the steps to make sure that you have all of the requirements on your server in order to run this, as well as any of the more tricky aspects of getting this up and running. So for this video, I'll be using a virtual server that I created with the VirtualBox virtualization software. I would encourage you to do the same. That way, as you follow along, everything will be exactly the same. If you're not sure how to do that, there are a number of videos on YouTube that will show you how to create a virtual server, a virtual Debian 10 server using VirtualBox. The only thing I want to point out is once you've created the machine, you want to make sure that it's highlighted. You want to go to Settings, you want to go to Network, and then you want to make sure that this is attached to a bridged adapter. I believe the default is NAT or NAT network. I can't remember now. But in order to SSH into your server, you're going to need the bridged adapter. So you're going to want to set that and click OK. So once you have your virtual machine created, you're going to want to power it on, and you just highlight it and go ahead and click Start. And what I want to do is, first of all, we need the server to be on so that we can SSH into it. But I also want that ability to SSH because I don't like the VirtualBox terminal. It's clunky, it's difficult to use, so I want to SSH into the server using something like PuTTY or a bash shell or a terminal. And this is how I go about doing it. It just makes life easier. So I'm going to log into this virtual server. And once I'm here, I need to get the IP address. And I can do that in a number of ways, but the quick and easy way to do it is IP address as the command. Go ahead and hit enter. And you'll see under the ENP0S3 there is an INET of 10.3.20.16, which is what I want. And this is a really good example of why I prefer to SSH into my virtual machines, and it's because I could have highlighted this for you to see, but I can't do that with this terminal. So it's clunky and difficult to work with. That's why I'm not using it. We don't want to shut it down, so I'm just going to minimize it, and at this point I can SSH into it now that I have my IP address. So if you're a Windows user, I just want to quickly point out that you can SSH into the server simply by using PuTTY. You can download this. There's plenty of information on how to use it and how to install it and all that good stuff. So if you're a Windows user, you're probably going to want to use PuTTY. There's like a bash emulation terminal as well for Windows. I haven't used it, so I don't know how good that is. But if you're using Mac or Linux, you can just use your system's terminal. So it would be the same. If you're a Mac user, you'll need to figure out where to go to get your shell, to get your terminal. I use Linux, and for the most part I do it because most of the servers I work on, all of the servers I work on, are Linux, and it makes sense for me to have a Linux operating system while I do my development work. So I have this set up as a virtual machine. It's Debian 10 with a GNOME desktop. It works great, and that's what I'll be using in this tutorial. So the GNOME desktop, you have the activities button up here in the upper left corner. I'm going to go ahead and click that. I'm going to open up a terminal. And at this point, I can SSH into my server. I don't know, you probably have to install some software to make that happen on Mac. I'm not 100% sure. I believe it's OpenSSH is the software that I'm using here with Linux. So the command for that would actually be SSH. Oops. SSH, and then I need to type in my username for the server that I'm trying to SSH into, so that's jkellogg, and then at, and in this case I'm going to use the IP address, so 10.3.20, and I think it was 16. So go ahead and enter. So you get this little warning about the key fingerprint. You just want to go ahead and hit yes here, type in yes. It's not anything you need to worry about. And now it's going to ask for the password for that user, jkellogg, on the 10.3.20.16 server, which is my virtual server. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in. And now I have successfully logged into my Omeka S server. And you can tell because I'm no longer in the jkellogg dev host, I'm in the Omeka S host. Now the very first thing that we want to do is make any updates. I'm using the apt repository. You likely will be too if you're using Debian 10. If you're using something different, then you may not be able to follow along with this tutorial. This is very specific to the apt repository, which is the main repository for Debian. So what I want to do is sudo apt update, put in my password. Uh-oh, I don't think I typed that in right. Sorry. Okay, so in my case, there was a pretty big update that needed to happen. So going from version 6 to version 7. So that's a very good example of why you want to run these commands before you start. In order to make those updates happen, we'll now need to use the sudo apt update command, or upgrade, sorry. And we'll go ahead and yes, and I'll pause until this is finished. Okay, now that my updates are complete, I can begin the installation process. So we would do that by opening up, actually I think what I'm going to do is just kind of put that off to the side there. Let's go ahead and clear this so that we have a blank slate. I'm going to go back to the activities and I'm going to select the Chrome browser and I'm going to go to omeka.org. And here we have the choice of Omeka Classic. If you're interested in that, I have a video series that you can have a look at. But in our case, we're looking at Omeka S today. So I'm going to go to the download page for that. And then from this page, we have the installation and upgrade instructions. And what I'm going to do is just open that in a new tab because I'm going to need to come back here for this link here. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the instructions. And let's see, let's do that. And so the first thing we're going to look at are the system requirements. We already have Linux, we have it updated, so now we need some of the software that the system requires. So Apache, MySQL, PHP, with some various extensions, and we're going to go through each one of these. Installing the software is a pretty easy process. Again, we're using the apt repository. That's just the way things work in Linux. If you want to install something and not have to compile it yourself, you would use a repository. Different distributions use different repositories, Debian-based repositories. The major Debian repository is apt, whereas with Red Hat versions it might be Yum or DNF, or Arch it might be Pacman. So while it's not crucial, it's kind of important to kind of understand what a repository is if you're new to Linux. In any case, we're using the apt repository to install all of the software that we need to install. So we do that. Well, first we'll install Apache first, and we'll do that with the sudo. Sudo is kind of the administrative keyword that lets you install things as root user or as an administrator. So we use sudo apt install Apache 2, and yes. And you'll see that it's telling us we need to do the allow override set to all and mod rewrite. I'll come back to this in a second. Let's just first focus on getting all of our software installed. So the next thing we're going to install is MySQL, and I use MariaDB, which is a derivative of MySQL, and I believe it is now the standard database for Debian distributions. So if I hit the up key on my keyboard, I get the last command that I typed, and because it's very similar, I just went ahead and did that. And I'm going to delete the Apache 2, and now I'm going to put in MariaDB-server, and this should install everything we need for our database. And it might take a second, so I'll pause the video. Okay, so that is finished installing, and you'll see that the MariaDB minimum version is 10.0.5, and up here we have 10.3, so we're in good shape. We don't have to worry about those being compatible. So next we have PHP and a number of extensions that need to go with that, and I guess I'll do them individually just so that it's very clear what it is that needs to be installed. So the very first thing we need to do is PHP minimum version 7. The most recently supported version I think is 7.3 in Debian, or using the apt repository. We'll go ahead and use the up arrow on our keyboard to get the last command. Sudo apt install. We'll just put in PHP. We don't have to put in the version number with Debian 10. It will automatically get the most recent version supported by apt. So enter, and yes. Okay, good. So as you can see, we have PHP 7.3. We're in good shape there. And it's telling us we have a few of these extensions that need to be installed as well. So first of all, the PDO. And honestly, I can't tell you exactly what these extensions do, other than, PDO MySQL is going to communicate with the MariaDB server XML, just so that you're able to kind of parse XML using PHP. If you're interested in knowing more, I suspect you can probably find a lot more online. All right, so we've installed PHP. Typically with these PHP extensions, you can just kind of put a dash in there and in the name of the extension. In this case, first thing we want is the PDO extension. So if we just do dash PDO and enter, and that's already the newest version, so we don't have to worry about that. Next, we will do the PDO MySQL, so that's using my arrow key to get the sudo apt install, php-pdo-mysql. So we've now installed that extension. Let's go ahead and hit the up arrow again, and we'll delete the PDO MySQL. You'll see that we need the XML extension, so I'm just going to put in XML, sudo apt install php-xml, enter. Yes. Okay, so we have our extensions installed, and they have these optional extensions to add here as well. So just to be safe, let's go ahead and install those. First, we need to install ImageMagick, and we can do that. I'm going to use the up key to get the sudo apt install. I'm going to delete the last PHP extension, and I'm going to type in ImageMagick. Yes. Okay, ImageMagick has been installed successfully. And so now we're told that we need to either install the ImageMagick extension or the GD extension. I'll show you how to do both of those. They're pretty easy. So again, I'll use the arrow key to get my sudo apt install. I'll erase the ImageMagick and php-image, what is it? I think it's iMagick. Yeah. So it's sudo apt install php-imagick. And for the GD extension, kind of deals with graphics, you can just do php-gd. Yes. Okay, so at this point we should get the default Apache page if we go to our server's IP address. So I'm going to do 10.3.20, whoops, .16 I think it was. Yep. So yeah, we have the Apache Debian default page, so that's great news. It looks like everything that we need to install has been installed successfully. Okay, let's go back to our instructions. Okay, so we had skipped the part where we need to configure Apache, so we're going to do that now. So the very first thing I think I'm going to do is deal with the allow override. And I guess the standard way of doing this, let's go ahead and clear the screen. I'm going to change directories, cd, into the etc directory. And here I can list all of the contents here. And up at the top, we're going to see that there is a directory for Apache 2. So we're going to want to go into there. cd Apache 2. We'll list the contents in there. And so what we need to do is grab some information from this Apache 2 configuration file and put it into the sites available. So I'm going to do that by running the less command. So I'm going to go with sudo less apache 2 conf, and I'm just going to scroll down quite a bit. What I'm looking for are the directory tags, and there they are. And so what I want to do is, so here it's telling us we can allow override set to all. And really, if you want to do it in the configuration file, you can do that. You can do that right here. But I don't want to do that. I'm going to do this kind of the standard way. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to hit Q to quit out of that. I'm now going to change directories into the sites available directory and list the contents there. You'll see this 000 default configuration. This is the file that we want. I'm going to use the nano text editor just to make this easy. So we can run sudo nano 00, and if you hit tab, that will autocomplete the name of the file for you. Let's go ahead and hit enter. And then in here under virtual host, we want to paste our directory tags. And then they have the allow override here set to none. We want to set it to all. And if you hit Control X, you will be prompted to save your changes. So you want to hit Y to say yes, I want to save them. The file name to write to, I don't want to change that, so I'm just going to hit enter. Great, so we've got that first part. Now what we need to do is enable mod rewrite. And in order to do that, let's just open this up a little further. So in order to do that, you need to run this command. You need to do it as a sudo user, and then A2 enmod, so that's Apache 2 enable mod, and in our case we want to enable rewrite, and we'll go ahead and enter. And so we get a little message saying that we need to restart Apache 2 in order for this configuration to actually happen. So we can do that with the system control call, sudo systemctl restart Apache 2. So that has restarted. Okay, let's just move this over a little right there. Okay, so we have installed Apache. We have set things to override, to allow override. We've enabled mod rewrite. We've installed MySQL. We've installed PHP and all the extensions. I think we're good to start the installation now. So we'll come to this next section here. Now before we install Omeka S, we need to create a MySQL database and user. This is pretty easy. I'm going to just go to my home directory. Let's go ahead and clear things. And the way we would do this is sudo mysql. Actually, I think you could use MariaDB as well. Either one of these would work. MariaDB-u root, so we're logging into MariaDB as the user root, which is the administrative account. And then we want a -p so that we're identified by password. If I go ahead and hit enter. So this first password that they're asking for is for the system, not for MariaDB. So whatever your user's password is, you're going to need to enter that here. And that's because we're using the sudo command. Okay, and so I hadn't set up a password for MariaDB for root, and there are ways of doing that. The installation process that we went through didn't require us to do that. So there's a chance that you may have to you may get a prompt to enter the password for MariaDB. In that case, if you've been following along, all you have to do is hit enter because you never set up an actual password. So enter will work to get you in here. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is just see what databases already exists. And you can do that with the show databases command. Databases. Okay, so that looks good. All right, what we need to do is create the Omeka S database, and you can do that simply by running this command, which is create database, and then whatever you want to name it. In my case, I'm going to call it Omeka S. If you're installing this on the same server as Omeka Classic, you want to make sure these database names are different. Okay, so create database Omeka S and semicolon. And now if I use the up arrow to get back to the show databases command, you'll see that we now have the Omeka S database. Now we need a user for that, and this is a much longer command. You can create the required user by running grant all privileges on the name of this database. So in this case it's Omeka S, and then you want a dot and then an asterisk. So really what this is saying is this dot asterisk means within the Omeka S database, all of the tables as well as all of the tables in that database, this user is going to have all privileges for. Okay, and next what we need to do is identify who the user is. We haven't created a user, but this command will create that user for us. So what we need to do here is to single quote. In my case, I'm going to call my user Omeka S user, and then single quote, and then the @ symbol, another single quote, localhost with a single quote, identified by single quote, and whatever you want to enter there for a password, and semicolon. So we're going to grant all privileges on the Omeka S database and all of its tables to the Omeka user at localhost, which is the server that MariaDB lives on. It's localhost, and unless you're using a database on a different server, which I hope you're not for the cases of this tutorial, and then identified by password. It's very unlikely that you're using something other than localhost, so you probably don't need to worry about that. So identified by password. Don't use password as a password. I'm only doing it for demonstration purposes here. So if I go ahead and hit enter, my new Omeka S user now has all privileges on the Omeka S database, which is exactly what we need. So in order to save those privileges, oddly enough, we need to run the flush privileges command. It may not be 100% necessary to do this, but this is good practice. So go ahead and run flush privileges, and now we can exit out of the database. So we can exit command, and we are back in our Linux environment. I'm going to go ahead and clear that. Okay, let's see what's next in the instructions. So we have downloaded, we haven't done that yet. Okay, where were we? Here we were. Must have a dedicated database. Okay, so we've done all that. Now we can go to the download part. So I'm going to go back to the Omeka S download page, and under this Get Omeka S, I'm going to right click. I'm going to copy link address. I'm going to come back over to my shell here, or terminal. And I'm going to change into the var www HTML directory, which is the default directory for Apache for your web server. Let's go ahead and enter. Let's list the contents there. So right now we have the index.html, which is displaying in our browser here. We don't want that, so we will run sudo rm for remove index.html. List. Okay, so all of those contents are gone. And now what we can do is download the zip archive for Omeka S. I'm going to use wget just in case. Sudo apt install wget, so that if this isn't on your machine, you can run this command and you'll be able to use it the same way I'm using it. So enter. I already have it installed, so no worries there. Now I can use wget to get my file. I believe we'll need to run it as a sudo user, so sudo wget, and then I'm just going to paste that URL that I got from this download here. And enter. Okay, so now if I use the ls command to list the contents, you'll see that we now have the Omeka S zip file. So we'll need to unzip that, and of course you may not have zip installed, and I actually don't think I do, so let's sudo apt install zip. Yes. Okay, now we can use the unzip command, so we can unzip that file. Sudo unzip Omeka and enter. Okay, that was pretty quick. Now we can use the list command, ls, and you'll see that we now have a directory for Omeka S. We're done with the zip file, so I'm just going to sudo remove Omeka S dash all of that. And to make life easier for me, and probably for you as well, I don't really want all of my Omeka S stuff living in this directory. I would have to append my IP address with this directory to kind of form the URL, and I don't want to do that because I believe that would take some additional Apache 2 configurations. So what I'm going to do is move all of the contents of this Omeka S directory into the HTML directory. You can do that with sudo move mv Omeka S and then asterisk, which will grab all of the directories and files, however not the hidden files, and we'll talk about that in a second. But sudo move Omeka S asterisk, and then if you just do a dot and forward slash, that means it will move all of the contents of Omeka S directory into the current directory, which is the HTML directory. So I'm going to hit enter. And now if I do the ls command, you'll see that we have a whole bunch of new files and directories here, which is exactly what we want. Now I'm going to cd change directories into Omeka S, the one we just removed all those files from. And if we use the ls command, there's nothing there. However, if we do ls-la, you'll see that we have this hidden .ht access file, which is an important file in order for all of this to work. So you're going to want to move that as well. You can do that with sudo mv .ht access, and then if you just do // that'll put it into one directory behind. So we're currently in Omeka S. We want this ht access file to go into this HTML directory. Go ahead and hit enter. If I do ls-la, you'll see that it's gone now. So we can change directories back, cd // And then actually if we do lsla, you'll see that the htaccess file is here. So very important that you do that. Just to keep things clean, I will now sudo rm-r, which means to recursively remove everything from the directory. And in order to delete a directory, you need to use that -r, Omeka S, because we no longer need that. Okay, let's go back to our instructions. We've downloaded the latest release. So the next thing we need to do is configure our database. And they're telling us that we need to go into the config directory. That's right here. And so we can sudo or cd change directories into config. And if I use the lsla command, you'll see that the database ini file that they're talking about here is indeed there. We'll use nano to edit this. So sudo nano database.ini. And here we need to provide some information on the database that we created a little bit earlier. So the user that I created was Omeka S user. The password that I used was password, which again, you never want to do, except for test instances that you don't care if people get into or not. Database name, I named it Omeka _S. And then the host is localhost. And if you've been following along, it's going to be localhost for you as well. Okay, great. I can exit out of this with Control X. I'm going to hit Y to say yes to save. I don't want to change the name. So we should be good to go there. Let's see, open config, add your username, password, and we did that. Username, database, okay. So step 3, we need to make sure the files directory is writable by Apache. Okay, we can do that. So if we do cd // to go back one directory, so we've left config, we're now back into the HTML directory, which is where the file directory is. Files directory is right there. So we need to change the owner of that in order for Apache to be able to write to it. And Apache has its own user in Linux called www-data. So we want that user to actually own the files directory. If we do lsla, you'll see that right now the files directory is owned by root, and the group that owns it is also root. And currently the directory, the root user has read, write, and execute privileges. The user group has execute and read privileges, and then any group can execute. So what we need to do is change this owner to www-data. And we do that with the chown command. So we can simply run sudo chown. I'm going to do -r to make it recursive, so that way everything that lives in files in the files directory is going to have these permissions changes or ownership changes. ww, I can hit tab at this point, it should autocomplete. If we wanted to change the user group to www-data as well, we would put in a colon and then www-data. Let's just open that up. And then the directory name. So we want to change the ownership recursively to www-data on the files directory. Hit enter, and now when I type ls-la, you'll see that the owner and the group have now changed to www-data, and this write permission has been set for this user. So we should be in good shape there. Minimize that. Okay, make sure the files directory is writable by Apache, so we should be good there. All right, now all we need to do is go to our web browser, navigate to the page for Omeka S, That's this one here. And if I go ahead and hit the refresh button, we get our install page. And it is telling us some installation requirements were not satisfied. Omeka requires the PHP extension MB string, but it is not loaded. Okay. So I didn't see that in the instructions, and that's fine. We can install that now with sudo apt install php-mb string. Anytime you have a PHP extension error like this, more often than not, when it gives the name of the extension, all you have to do is PHP dash the name of that extension. So that's what we did here. Doesn't always work, but 80% of the time it does. So sudo apt install php-mb string, enter, yes. Okay, now if we reload that page, so because it's PHP, we have to restart Apache to get those configurations up and running properly. So sudo systemctl restart Apache 2. And that should fix that problem. We'll go ahead and reload this. Okay, good. And now it's just a matter of entering our information. I'm going to just do that quickly here. And then display name for the user. Just put in a password. Omeka S tutorial. And then we can change the time zone. Let's see. America. I'm on the West Coast, so we're looking for Los Angeles. I'll go ahead and submit that. And now I can log in. Let's see, they're asking for email, u.edu, and my password. And so at this point, I have successfully logged in. If I want to see the site, I can just take out the admin part of the URL. Not much to see here. We haven't really configured anything. So we can go to the admin dashboard. I think we would have to add a site. Call it test site. And go ahead and add that. And so now if I go back here, I now have my test site that I can go in and start making pages for, which I won't do because I suspect there are plenty of tutorials out there that will show you the user interface for this. This video is more focused on the backside, the server end of things, not the UI. So I think I'll end things here. And of course, if you have questions, comments, certainly put them in the comments below. I will happily try to answer questions when I can. I also will take suggestions on future videos. I tend to focus specifically on open source systems for libraries, be that public or academic or special. I'm happy to kind of look at those things as time permits. And kind of share how these sorts of things can be up and running. If that's the sort of thing you're interested, certainly subscribe to my channel. I do try to get content out once a month or so. I don't always do that, but as long as time permits, I certainly try. So I hope you found this helpful, and thanks for watching.